Welcome, everyone, to the Mindful Moments podcast. We're so glad that you're back joining us for another season. These podcasts are an opportunity for us to share the amazing lives and work of people within our community, to show what different mindfulness practices can look like and how people kind of adapt mindfulness to allow them to live with more self-awareness, more connected to themselves, connected to others around them. My name's Lilly. I am the founder of Mindful Sparks, and today I'm joined by Myshi Mackenzie Baker, a teacher here in Bangkok. With a Sri Lankan mother and a Scottish father, Maishi grew up in Sri Lanka before moving to Scotland at 19. For the past 12 years, she's made Thailand her home, where she lives with her husband and 2 children. She strongly believes that her childhood significantly impacted who she is today. Embracing daily mindfulness has been a journey for her. Although it's not always been easy, she's dedicated to it every day, striving to bring its benefits to her family and everyone around her. So thank you so much for joining us today, Maishi. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes. So let's start at the beginning. I mean, how did you find out about mindfulness? Where did your journey kind of begin?
Hi, Lily. I'm very excited to be here as well. So you know what? I was thinking about this when I was little. My mom, she would force me to go to Sunday school. I was a Buddhist growing up, and meditation was a part of our lives. Obviously, back then, I would just sit there. My mind would wander everywhere. I wasn't really meditating. But then recently, when we had COVID, we all went through all these things. Everyone went into some dark places. I realized some of those practices really came handy. Um, I'm not sure exactly when it started, but somewhere around the first round of COVID, we had to go do online teaching, and I was teaching the younger kids, and we just started dropping. The numbers were dropping, and I just, for some reason, was taking it personally. I was like, I'm a bad teacher. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And I found myself just spiraling and thinking about it every day. Like, I would be sitting having dinner with my family, and I'd be on Pinterest trying to come up with ideas for how to keep the kids engaged. And I didn't realize it was a problem till my so something that I would always do with my daughter is at the end of the night I would sing her a song, I would stroke her arms, and then I'd kiss her goodnight. And if she falls asleep on my chest, I'd sniff her hair. And I can't explain this feeling, but it was just feeling of euphoria. I would sniff her hair and just feel really full. And I realized something was wrong when I wasn't feeling anything. Um, and I knew that something was up. I needed to get some help. I wasn't really doing therapy at the time, so I just had to start reflecting. Somewhere along the way, during that time, I'm sure a lot of people were going through similar things. Someone sent me this 21 days of meditation by Deepak Chopra. And as I was doing that every day, I realized, wow, okay, I was doing this since I was a kid. I was meditating, trying to stay present, staying in the moment. And then things like, that feeling of euphoria when I sniffed my daughter's hair, I never took that for granted again. So I think that was when I truly became mindful. And I realized, okay, this is something that I have to do on a daily basis. So I started practicing just little things every day just to keep myself aware and be in the present. Yeah.
It's a really, really powerful story. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's interesting to hear how there was like a tangible quality to it, in the sense, there was physical touch with your daughter, and then obviously the smell, from smelling her hair, like that led to that
Yeah.
emotional response. And then that kind of having that as like an anchor point, but then it didn't anchor you anymore.
Yeah.
To have that awareness as well is a really big thing, because I think a lot of people could relate to, yeah, actually I used to do this, or this is something from my childhood that I love, but it doesn't bring me the same sensations anymore. It doesn't bring me the same levels of joy. But
Mhm.
maybe that's just because I'm getting older, or maybe that's because I'm, this now, like insert reason, right? But
Mhm.
being able to notice that I still want that joy, I still want that connection in my life, and I have the power to do something about that.
Mhm.
That's a really strong, brave
Yeah.
decision to make. I think that's amazing.
I mean, to be honest, I thought mindfulness was being positive. I think for a long time, I thought it was about this feeling of happiness, right? So I would always try and cling on to that feeling of happiness. So I knew something was up when I wasn't feeling even the slightest feeling of happiness. But obviously, we'll talk about it later, but a long time, my understanding of mindfulness has changed as well. Yeah.
And, you know, and I think it's so true. I agree. Like when I started, I think there was that kind of illusion of like, oh yeah, if I practice mindfulness, which when I began, I very much thought it was meditation, just meditation. And then I'm going to be happy all the time. I won't have challenges. I won't be frustrated by things. I'm going to be living at like this base level and not this base level, or living a life that goes between the two, that has that fluctuation. And I think as my journey's progressed, for sure, I've realized that it's so much more than focusing on that happiness. It's the whole journey towards it. Where did it go? Why have I put value on that happiness? Is it
Mhm.
a value that I want to keep, that I align with? Or is it something that maybe somebody else has put on that I'm just agreeing with?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how would you say then, like, your mindfulness practice has evolved since then? I mean, you mentioned you started going to like meditation and stuff at a young age, but it didn't engage you, you didn't connect with it. But then meditation this time round has found it's landed with you in some capacity. Has
Mhm.
it, do you practice mindfulness in any other ways?
Yeah, so I think just going back to that time, I always think about it as being a bit of a dark time. Sometimes you just feel so helpless. You have to hold on to one little thing to bring you back, right? And it was little things like noticing daily, I don't know, like the leaves moving in a certain way when the wind blows when I was on my run. So it started with little things like noticing daily small things. But then sometimes you just have that feeling in your chest that you can't get rid of. And I always found that it helped to write things down, to try and sort of write out what's on the inside out on paper. And that really helped. So I would just start off with writing three things that I'm grateful for from that day, just to bring me back. I've always been quite grateful. I think that's something that's been a superpower, but also a thing that holds me back, because I'll put up with a lot of things before I'm not grateful. But I think, as you said, it's evolved. So I don't feel like I need to write it down anymore. It's become more of a self-talk kind of practice. So I might have this uncomfortable feeling that happens quickly while I'm at work. And, I'm teaching or talking to someone, and they may have said something that's triggered me and it's given me this uncomfortable feeling. And I can't obviously sit there and write it on paper in the moment. So I'll probably just make note of it. And when I get a minute later, just try to really get to the root of it. And I think self reflection is important. So, like I said, a feeling of discomfort is not necessarily a bad thing, but trying to figure it out. So, is this coming from me and insecurity that I have, or could it be an insecurity that the other person had that they're putting on me? So, just trying to figure it out a little bit. It's become a bit more of a daily practice rather than ignoring uncomfortable feelings or being scared of it. Just like, something's wrong. I'm not okay just because I'm feeling uncomfortable, trying to get rid of it, just accepting it and taking it on.
Mm.
There was this podcast that I used to listen to quite a lot. It's this lady called Julia Christina, and she's on YouTube. And one of the things she said was when you have that feeling of discomfort, instead of being scared of it, try to be curious about it and see it as a way to get to know yourself a little bit more. And that's really helped me, I'd say. So I think I've gone from, writing and just getting my feelings out to now just a lot of self talk and self reflection. Some days it's just a quick one. And some days it's, more just sitting in bed for a while, trying to figure it all out.
Mhm. That's a
Yeah.
really cool example. And I love that what you were mentioning about getting curious. I think that's so important. That's one of the first things like that we teach, when we're going into schools and in our workshops, is the first bit of any kind of mindfulness practice is to really understand, to try and practice that objective point of view, which takes a long time. And there are some days we can be a little bit more objective, as in I'm annoyed, or, you know, I'm excited, I'm nervous, instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm so annoyed because that person did this and that person did that and that wasn't right and there was a traffic jam, trying to kind of layer on all these other areas instead of just being like, okay, I'm annoyed, like where does that come from? And like you're saying, getting curious, like, is this something directly related to me, or is this something that I'm reacting to based on an experience that I've just had?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then how can I, like you were saying, can I deal with this in the moment? Right. Obviously, that you gave such a great example. If you're having a conversation with someone and then you feel that uncomfortable sensation in your body, you can't be like, sorry, 1 second, hold that thought. Let me write that answer down. But with practice and with time, being able to go back again from put my teeth in, an objective point of view, to be able to say like, okay, this happened. This was something I noticed in my body. Maybe my breathing changed. Maybe I felt tension. Maybe I felt discomfort. Why did that happen? And
Mm.
can I look at that from a place of compassion to know that it's okay that I felt those emotions, or it's okay that I responded in that way because I'm human and we're complicated people, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, so obviously we've talked quite a bit about you. How does this translate to teaching? Like, do you have these kind of conversations or these moments with your kids that you teach, like around, like reacting or responding, or getting curious about their experiences?
Yeah, 100%. I sometimes I have to stop myself from talking too much about being aware and being mindful, because I try to remember that a 6 or 7-year-old brain can't comprehend the same things that, I've spent all these years trying to figure all this stuff out. But, whenever they come to us with any small problem, a classic example is so and so said that I'm not good at this. And so I have to remind them, do you think you're not good at it? And they're like, no, I think I'm pretty good at drawing or whatever it is. I'm like, well, have to remind yourself that if you believe it, then it's not true, is it, what the other person says? And it's easier said than done, because I have to remind myself, right? Like, for so long I saw myself as the way other people saw me. And it's quite a recent thing where I've had to tell myself, okay, you got to love yourself. You got to believe you're good enough. But yeah, 100%. I have noticed that the more mindful I've become, or the more I've practiced, the more it translates to teaching and into my classroom. I feel like it has to be there now. There was a time when there was a mindfulness corner, perhaps, oh, if you're feeling uneasy, you can go there, but it's not that anymore. Like, because I don't go into a corner when I'm upset. It's in here, you got to just get techniques to deal with it. So I try to teach the kids the same techniques at their level.
That's awesome. I think there is an element, I think, with mindfulness when it does come to the classroom, that there can be a little bit of performative action towards, yes, we do mindfulness in our school. And by no means am I downplaying mindfulness corners. I think they're a phenomenal resource. I love them in my classroom as well. Let the kids take ownership of a space that they feel safe in, where they can go and regulate, where they can take a moment, 100%. But to say like that, just tick, that's mindfulness, I think doesn't do it justice. And it also kind of undermines the ability of what these kids can do. I think if you're giving them, like you're saying, right, you've got to obviously have a conversation at their level, use examples that they can relate to. But once you give them enough structure and framework to work around, okay, like for example, you were saying about, okay, let's turn that back on me. How do I feel about this? What do I believe? That's such a powerful question, because then once I understand what I believe and where my values are, I can then make a decision based on them, not based on somebody else's values, and how I'm going to maybe go into a conversation, or how I'm going to go into maybe some conflict or a challenge, because I know where I stand and I know myself. And it always blows my mind. Like, I'm always surprised how young kids are that get this. And once they've had that exposure to it and they're in a safe space where they can practice saying these kind of things, right? Nobody naturally is like, what do I believe? What are my values? It's not something that is inherent to us. It's something we really have to practice, and we have to put the time in. But then it does become natural. It becomes more habitual for them. And, if they're picking that up at 5, 6, 7 years old, by the time they get to our age, not like they're not going to have any problems, but they're so much more well equipped
Yeah.
to deal with challenges.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I have a little mirror like next to me at all times because my daughter, she's been going through this mindfulness journey with me. And, she would have tantrums. I would help calm her down using my techniques. And now it's just got to the point where it can be a bit annoying sometimes, where she's like, I'll get frustrated on the road. And she's like, come on, mommy, you can't really control what that person is doing. What can you control? So yeah, it's nice. It's nice to actually kind of see it in something else.
Right.
Because with the kids, in a class, you get them for a year, you see some change, they go away. But I've had my own kid for a while now, and I've seen her evolve.
Right. It's unbelievable. And have you noticed, I mean, obviously we've been talking about the classroom context, but what about the wider context of work? Have you noticed how being more self-aware, like you were saying, you mentioned earlier about, you've been working really hard to believe your version of you and how you see yourself as the truth, as opposed to what other people are putting on you or the labels that people are assigning you. Have you found that having that approach, having that increased self-awareness has changed the way like you move through like a professional working space?
Yeah, 100%. And if I'm being completely honest, it's still very much a work in progress, like I'm still learning to love myself, accept myself, but I can tell you that I'm much better than I used to be. Even if I think about current workplace, like, from when I started till now, just sometimes focusing on myself helps, like my daughter says, like things that I can't control, or people, like their actions I can't control. So how they choose to do the same thing as me, I can't control it, right? If it affects me directly, if it affects my students, of course, I'll pick a battle, I'll talk about it. But at the end of the day, I have to remind myself that it doesn't change who I am. So, trying to figure out who I am authentically and then trying to stay true to that person is a personal goal I'm currently working on.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful. And, like you say, it is a work in progress, right? Because in 6 months' time, who knows what could happen in 6 months? There might be some big life changes, or, everything might just stay the same, but there will be something that's going to impact the way that you engage with yourself and others and the world around you, which might elevate, the way you see yourself, right? And I think it's a very vulnerable place to be, I'll admit. Like I'm definitely going through a similar journey, like having stepped back from teaching and in an environment where I'm like, I know what I'm doing here. Like, okay, yeah, you have new kids, you suss them out for that first kind of half term, you're kind of working out the dynamics and everything. But other than that, I'm like, I can teach maths, I can teach phonics, I can do all this. Like I have a million resources up my sleeve that I can do because I've been doing it for so long. And to step into the space of like learning to run a business has me questioning, gosh, every day, like, what am I doing? Like, just before this podcast, I actually had a meeting with my accountant. It's the first time I've ever had an accountant, the first time I've had a meeting with them. And she's like, how are you doing? And my first response was, I'm absolutely terrified for this meeting. And she's like, why? And I was like, I've never had a meeting with an accountant before, and I don't know what you want from me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to give you the information you need or answer your questions. And that's really nerve-wracking. But at the same time, having that kind of bravery to acknowledge that vulnerability, as you are as well, just being like, this is where I'm at now, and this is where I'm working towards. And there are going to be days when I can be like, yeah, I am that badass teacher. I am that, like I know what I'm doing. And then there are going to be days going, okay, nothing worked today. Like, does Pinterest have an answer? We've all been there, I think, as teachers. Where's YouTube? Somebody's got to have an answer of how I can engage my class again, right? But to do that with that awareness and that compassion, which I think comes across so clearly with you, of like, how I talk to myself is important. The boundaries that I'm setting are important. And they're important because they support me. And in turn, that helps me support my daughter, my family, my kids, and the radius keeps going out. It's really cool.
Like new settings tend to bring out the vulnerabilities, right? I recently, and this is, I would say, the start of last year, I realized something about myself. When new people come in or you start at a new place, I don't know if it's a natural thing, but you always want to sort of prove yourself, or you want people to know who you are authentically. But I don't know if it's just me or if it happens to everyone, but I feel like people get put into boxes and you immediately get given a personality that's not necessarily who you are. And you can either fight about it, try and prove yourself, or you just get on with it and let them see in time, right? I mean, it doesn't help that I'm wearing pink today, but I kind of get classed as like the Barbie girl or the girly girl often. And then once people get to know me, they're like, oh, wow, she's like the opposite of what I thought she was. Yeah. And the same thing as like your professional abilities. Some people have this viewpoints, right? Like if you dress a certain way, act a certain way, that means they're not a good teacher. And maybe that's just, that's their problem, not mine. But again, instead of trying to prove myself, I realized that, okay, if it takes a year for people to see who I am or what I'm capable of, I just have to let it happen. Of course, if they insult me along the way, I have to stand up for myself. But yeah, some people it's taken a year to accept me as a person. And if that's what it is, I'm okay with that, to stay true to myself, right?
That's a big, powerful statement, just to say like, and I'm okay with that it's a big statement, because a lot of people, myself included, there are definitely times where I struggled to put that bit on the sentence. Like, no, I still want, I want them to think this about me. I want them to think that about me. Like, what can I do to prove myself, to change your opinion about me? And all the time I'm going through that, to use your words, I'm not my authentic self, right? I'm not being true to my values. And I'm sure lots of people could relate to that. But to find that comfort in the discomfort, in a way, right? The discomfort knowing that they're viewing you in a way that isn't necessarily accurate or kind, but to be okay with that to a point. Obviously, we still need to stand up for ourselves if it's, if it's not okay, but to kind of choose where we put our energy. Do I really want to put all that time and energy into trying to change your mind? Or do I want to put that time into energy into things that bring me joy and make me feel good about myself and bring, joy to my day?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy.
Oh gosh, no. 100% agree. It's not easy. It's a constant work in progress. And there are definitely days where you're like, I am mindfulness. I'm good at this. And then there are days when you're just like, okay, I don't know who changed the tape in my head, but I have a very different narrator happening today.
I can feel great 1 minute, right? Like I'll drive into work feeling great, I'm proud. I'm look at the sun shining. And then it's a different person driving home.
Questioning life choices and thinking, should I be doing something else with my life right now? It's been so good chatting with you. And I really, it's been really insightful as well, like hearing your journey into mindfulness and how mindfulness shows up in your life. And I think, giving those examples of just being like, it is taking those moments to check in. What words am I using? And like, one thing I say, like older kids, but I'm like, the words in your head, they're going to be there, right? They're never going to go. But are they accurate? Are they kind? And are they helpful? Is this something that you want to continue that narrative in your head? Is this a daydream you're happy to get lost in? Because it's okay to daydream. But if this is one that's stressing you out, why are we putting our attention on that? And I think it's, just to hear you be like, yeah, there are times when sometimes I need to write it out and times when I can just quickly have a moment just to check in. And then if all else fails, we'll just remember what your daughter said. Can I control that?
Good to have her around. So.
Right? How old is she now?
She's 7.
Gosh,
Um,
just to be there soon. Just wait till she gets a bit older in her teens.
Oh
See how
God.
it goes.
Just gonna forget that. Mindfulness will be a completely different meaning then, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Or she'll just be this amazingly elevated human, just
Let's hope for
under
that.
control. So just to finish up this conversation, as a question we ask kind of everyone that joins our podcast, about 60% of people that come to our workshops have heard of mindfulness. They kind of know what it is, but they don't really know how to explain it, if in their own words. So how would you explain what mindfulness is?
This one's tricky, I think, because obviously I don't know if there's any true answer, but um, to me, it has changed over time. But at present, I think it's all about just being aware of who I am in the place that I am in. So being mindful as a mom is very different to being mindful as a teacher or as a colleague, I think. And just trying to be grateful. I want to continue to be grateful for what I have and just appreciate the things that I have in life and just try to stay true to who I am. So being aware of my feelings and the place I'm in and accepting all the feelings, the comfortable feelings, the euphoric hair sniffing feelings, the uncomfortable feelings, just accept it all and just being aware of who I'm being in that moment. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been so lovely to spend this time with you. And I look forward to hopefully connecting with you at some point soon in the future. And for everyone else who's watching, I hope you got something from this. Maybe something clicked for you, or it's given you something to think about, which was the purpose of these podcasts. And we look forward to seeing you at our next one. So have a lovely day, everyone. Have a lovely evening, Maishi. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lily. It's
Bye.
been great talking to you.
Thank you.